So today, uh, with your permission and blessings, I would like to speak a little bit about Narottama Thakur. Um, I had initially thought about speaking about Bhaktisiddhanta, and we actually have both of them coming. So I was thinking I'll speak a little bit about both of them, and then when I started taking points for Narottama Thakur, I realized that there is so much. Today's Narottama Thakur's appearance, yeah. So then when I started taking points, then I realized that there was so much nectar in both of them. So I thought maybe I'll do one this Friday and one next Friday. So today we'll have a discussion on Narottama Thakur. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langate girim yakramatama vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam. So all of us are familiar with Narottama Thakur because of his wonderful composition of various kirtans. And even though he was vastly learned, very erudite, not only intelligent but deeply studied the scriptures, his way of preaching was through kirtans. And he also wrote very simple kirtans, almost. So in today's environment or contemporary environment, you can consider that if there is like if there is a movie song that's very popular, or there is a pop song that's very popular, and he would compose lyrics to those musics and sing those kirtans, and people loved it. So he was reaching the masses, and one of the earliest preachers who was using this technique of reaching the masses through contemporary music. And once people got hooked onto the kirtan, and then his songs were very wonderful, that they also contained a lot of philosophical philosophical depth in them. So then then people would start meditating on the words and develop a lot of understanding also. So Narottama Das, he appeared. His exact day of appearance is not known, but he appeared while Mahaprabhu was present. He never actually met Mahaprabhu, but he was born before he was born before the disappearance pastime of Mahaprabhu. So before I talk a little bit about his biography, also wanted to first talk about his spiritual position. That in Bhakti Ratnakar, it is explained that Narottama Das Thakur in Krishna Leela, he has the position of Champak Manjari. Most of you know the position of Manjaris. that Srimati Radharani is served by gopis, and the gopis are served by manjaris. So the manjaris have a very specific mood that their attachment is primarily to Srimati Radharani. They don't really have a strong desire to directly associate with Krishna. And they essentially help Srimati Radharani in the service of Krishna. So it's not that they're averse. They're obviously very attached to Krishna, but the service is primarily rendered to Srimati Radharani. And the acharyas have revealed that most of the associates of Mahaprabhu who had come, they had positions of either gopis or manjaris. Because Mahaprabhu, even though he was Krishna, he came in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So he came with her associates. So his close associates like Ramananda Rai was Lalita Gopi. And the 6 Goswamis, they're considered to be manjaris. Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. So Narottama Das Thakur is Champak Manjari in the spiritual world, and her position is that of service to Rupa Manjari, who is Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Manjari's position is that of service to Lalita, one of the Ashtagopis, and of course Lalita's position is that of service of Srimati Radharani. So we see this mood Das Anudas Anudas very strong there. One of the songs composed by Narottama Das Thakur is Shri Rupa Manjari Pada, which is glorifying the eternal position of Rupa Goswami. So with this we can also understand that even though they were playing a Prakrit Leela, but also they were aware of their position. And and acting on both bases. They were doing the Prakrit Leela and helping Mahaprabhu in his pastimes, but also fully aware of their spiritual positions. Narottama Das Thakur was born on the day of Shukla Panchami in the month of Magh, and he was born on the banks of the Padmavati river it was a small kingdom by the name of Gopalpur. So his father was actually the king of that area, or his father Purushottam Das, and his mother's name is Narayani Devi, and his uncle or his father's older brother was Krishna Datta. So Krishna Datta and Purushottam Datta, they ruled. Krishna Datta was the main king. Purushottam Datta was the co-king, so to speak, or helping his brother. And they belonged to the Kaista family, or the Kaista caste. And this will be a little significant later on. So at least in Bengal, the Kaistas are considered to be Shudras. So by caste, Narottama Das Thakur was a Shudra, even though by profession they were a king, and very, very rich. So not only did they have this position of authority, but they ruled over a very opulent kingdom. And some measures it is said that they collected revenue of 60,000 gold coins every day. So you can understand how wealthy they were. When Narottama Das was born to Purushottam and Narayani, he became became the center of everyone's attention, not just because he was the king's son, but also because he was very handsome. As a child, he was very beautiful, very quiet, and people would come just to see him. And those who were close to the queen, they would hold him and experience a lot of peace just by holding him. Um, Around this time, and this is of course unknown to Narottama Das, another pastime was unfolding, that of Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu, we know that when his father Jagannath Mishra passed away, then he went to Gaya to perform the Shraddha ceremony of his father. And at that time in Gaya, he met his spiritual master Ishwarapuri. And Ishwarapuri initiated him, and that kind of showed the transition, or that was the time of the transition of Mahaprabhu from one Leela to another. Before that, he was playing the Leela of being the logician, the foremost scholar, Gyani. And after that, he became completely immersed in Krishna Bhakti. So when he was returning from Gaya, he was unable to contain himself. And he was so immersed in love of Krishna that instead of going back to Navadvip, he headed to Vrindavan. But as he was heading to Vrindavan, there was an Akashvani, there was a voice from the sky that asked him to wait. This was not the right time for him to go. So at that time, Mahaprabhu was near Keturi. So Keturi is close to the area where Narottama Das Thakur was born. Now, this is not when he was born. This is a few years after he was born. Since his birth date is not known, it's not clear how old he was, but he was a very young boy at that time. So at that time, Mahaprabhu was near Keturi, and by the village of Keturi, there's a river called Padmavati that flows there. So Mahaprabhu, he summoned the deity of the river, Padmavati, and then he instructed her. He said that I have all this love of Krishna in my body that I'm not able to hold. I will deposit it in your water. And sometimes later, and a devotee of mine will come and take bath in the river. And then you deposit this love in him. So Padmavati asked that, how will I recognize him? So Mahaprabhu said that you will recognize him because when he enters into your waters will overflow their banks. So saying this, Mahaprabhu, he took bath in the river, and then he went back to Mayapur. So that place is currently known as Prematali. When Narottam was 12 years old, he had a dream, and in the dream, Nityanand Prabhu and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared and asked him to take a bath in the river of Padmavati. So Narottam, at this point, he had already started to display very strong signs of transcendence. So when he had gone to school, he was the most brilliant student, but he soon lost interest. So he mastered Sanskrit and Nyaya and Vyakran in a very short time, and his teachers were very enthusiastic that he'll become a great scholar. But he lost interest in all the mundane aspects of scholarship. And from the mouth of the other devotees, he would hear about the glories and pastimes of Mahaprabhu and Nityanand Prabhu, and he constantly started meditating on them, praying to them. So when he was 12 years old, in his dream, Mahaprabhu, Nityanand Prabhu came, and they assured him that his aspirations would come true. They also instructed him to take a bath in the river. So when when so when Narottam Das Thakur entered into the river, the waters overflowed the bank. And when he came out of that river, he was a completely transformed person. He was barely able to contain all that Krishna prema in him. He was furiously running, chanting Krishna's name. And since then, so he was already on that part, but since then he became completely absorbed. He had nothing else to do other than chant Krishna's name, chant Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu's name. So his father became concerned that he might leave and become a renunciant. So they actually appointed a guard to keep an eye on him 24 hours a day. And Narottam Das Thakur was waiting for an opportunity. It so happened that after some time, his father and uncle were called by the King of Bengal for an audience. So when they were gone, then he took that opportunity to escape. So he escaped his village and he headed straight to Vrindavan. So at that time, essentially the journey was by foot. And Narottam was born in a privileged family. He had never traveled alone. He was always attended by servants, and he really did not have any experience of traveling alone. Young boy, but somehow else, because of this strong Krishna prema within him, throughout the journey, he was protected by devotees. They either gave him shelter, and the journey lasted. Doesn't say clearly how long, but one can understand several months. And throughout the journey, he was taken care of by other Vaishnavas, because he was not even concerned about eating or sleeping, and his only obsession was to reach Vrindavan. And when he went to Vrindavan, then he traveled and met the devotees over there, went to all the places of pilgrimage. So at that time, Jiva Goswami was there in Vrindavan. Actually, even Rupa and Sanatan Goswami were there. Jiva Goswami, he took charge of Narottam Das, and he asked him specifically to take shelter of another great devotee of Mahaprabhu called Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami was one of the oldest devotees of Mahaprabhu who was preaching on his behalf, even before the 6 Goswamis. So Lokanath Goswami and Bhupat Goswami, one of the very, very early, even before Mahaprabhu had started his Leela, Mahaprabhu had instructed them both to go to Vrindavan and wait. And so he was there. So Lokanath Goswami, he lived in a very, very secluded area. Currently the Gokulananda temple is there, and he worshipped the Radha Vinod deities over there. Very, very humble person. He had taken a vow not to accept any disciples, because out of genuine humility, he would say that I'm not qualified to worship Mahaprabhu. How can I train others to worship? So he had taken this vow. Jiva Goswami, he asked Narottam Das to go and serve Lokanath Goswami. And Narottam Das, he started with lot of deference and respect. He started serving Lokanath Goswami, and after some time, he asked to be accepted as a disciple. And Lokanath Goswami kept saying no. He said, "I've taken this vow. I cannot break my vow." So Narottam Das, he wanted to render some. Uh, Narottama Das in his mind thought that maybe because I'm the son of a king, or maybe because I have pride in me, I'm not qualified to be the disciple. So he wanted to render some menial service to Loknath Goswami. So what he would do was that early in the morning, when Loknath Goswami would go by the side of the jungle to pass stool, after he passed stool, Narottama Das would go. This was completely unknown to Loknath, and he would clean the area. He would remove the stool, he would water it, and because at the time they used soil, so he would keep soil over there. And then after some time, Loknath Goswami, he noticed that he was going to the same place, but it was always clean, and there was, there was no stool there. There was soil over there. So the next time when he went, so after he did his morning ablutions, he went and hid behind a tree. And after some time, he saw that Narottama Das came and he started cleaning all the areas. And Loknath Goswami, he was upset at him. He said, I don't want to accept this service from you. So why are you doing this behind my back? And at that time, Narottama Das, he broke down and he said that if you can't accept me as your disciple, then my life is not even worth living. So Loknath was so much touched by the humility and devotion in Narottama Das that he broke his vow, and he said, "Okay, I will accept you as my disciple." So Narottama Das is the only disciple of Loknath Goswami. He did not before that and after that he did not accept any other disciples. And Loknath Goswami also instructed Narottama Das Thakur to take shelter of Jiva Goswami and study the scriptures. He also instructed him to install 6 deities as his service. So, with the permission of his guru, Narottama Das, he went to Vrindavan, and then he began to serve the Shat Goswamis and began to study under the tutelage of Jiva Goswami. So at that time, he was joined by Srinivas Acharya and later by Shyamananda Pandit. And these 3 would become the next wave of preachers of the mission of Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu's teachings were first carried by the Shat Goswamis. And the teachings of the Shat Goswamis were then carried by Srinivas Acharya, Shyamananda Pandit, and Narottama Das Thakur. So the 3 of them became very, 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 very fast friends. And they would spend hours and hours studying the scriptures, discussing Krishna Katha, doing Kirtan. So Jiva Goswami eventually asked them to take the word of Mahaprabhu and spread it around. So in a way, they were the first book distributors, because they took a cart and they loaded all the prominent literature, Vaishnava literature, on the cart. So at the time, they were all handwritten books. So they were all original manuscripts. So they were loaded in the cart and they headed northeast to preach. So as they were traveling, they passed a town known as Vanishwanapur. And the king of that town, Bhirambir, he was a king, but he was also a thief. So the whole town was like a town of dacoits. So they would lure travelers in and then steal from them. So when they saw these three effulgent young men coming with a cart. And by the spies, the king was told that it looks like they're carrying a great treasure in their cart. So, so they set, they set their thieves on them, and at night when they were sleeping, they stole the cart. So in the morning when they woke up, they were completely uh, bewildered by the fact that the cart is lost. Very very sad that the service given to them, so much work done by the Goswamis, all that was lost. So, so basically, they had like an Ishtagoshti, and they decided that Narottam Das would go to Keturi Gram, which is his village, and Shamanand Prabhu would head to Utkal, and Srinivas Acharya would stay back and retrieve the books. So Srinivas Acharya's pastime is again a little involved pastime, but he was able to go to the king, convince him to get the books, and actually the king and the whole kingdom became Vaishnavas. Even to this day, that town is a Vaishnav town. So Narottam, when he left there for Khetrigam, he traveled quite a bit. So he went to Navadvip, the place of appearance of Mahaprabhu, and by this time Mahaprabhu had already left. But many of his associates were there. Some of them had left, but many of them were there. So Bhakti Ratnakar has explained that he met with some of the prominent associates of Mahaprabhu, like Shuklamba Chakravarti. He met Ishan Thakur, who was the servant of Mahaprabhu, or actually was a servant of Sachi Mata. And he went to the house of Srinivas Acharya, where the whole Sankirtan movement was initiated by doing Kirtan first at night. Then he went to Shantipur and he met with Achyutananda, the son of Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya had also left by the time. Then he went to Ambika Kalan and he went to the house of Gauridas Pandit. The Gauridas Pandit is a sweet pastime in Mahaprabhu Leela. He's the incarnation of Satyabhama. And the disciple of Gauridas Pandit, Hriday Chaitanya, he's the guru of Shyamanand Pandit, the friend of Narottam Das Thakur. So in this way he traveled. He went to Saptagram. The village of Saptagram is they're all followers of Nityanand Prabhu. So he went over there, and then he went to Kharadagram, and there the two consorts of Nityanand Prabhu, Jahanva Mata and Vasudha, were still there. So he spent time with them discussing the glories of Mahaprabhu, Nityanand Prabhu, Krishna Leela. After that, he went to Krishnanagar, and there he met Abhiram Gopal. Abhiram Gopal Thakur was a very powerful personality. He had a whip, and if he touched anybody with the whip, the person would be bestowed with Krishna Prema. Then he went to Jagannath Puri, and then he visited the Tota Gopinath temple. So after all this traveling, then he went back to Keturi Gram. Now, in all this time that Narottam Das was away, first living in Vrindavan, serving his guru, then traveling, his father and uncle had passed away. And the son of his elder brother, or his father's elder brother, Santosh Datta, was now the king. So when the news came that Narottam Das is coming back, and by this time Narottam Das had become famous, that people would flock to listen to his kirtans, to hear him speak. So when the news came that he's coming, the whole town became joyous. And his cousin Santosh, who was the king now, he himself, as soon as he saw him, he fell at his feet to take his blessings, embraced him, and very nicely he was serving his own brother. Uh, so Narottam Das, he actually initiated Santosh into the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So Santosh wanted to do some more service, and he said, "How can I help you? How can I serve you?" So the Narottam Das, he asked him to enact a festival. Prabhupada would say that festivals are the mother of bhakti, and the Vaishnavacharyas, they exemplified that. They would hold opulent festivals, large festivals, and the festivals would be inundated with people from everywhere. Some people coming out of curiosity, some people to have fun. And in the festivals, there would be dioramas, plays, kirtans, dances. So it was just an environment that was saturated with transcendence. Uh, Santosh also, in a very short time, because he was the king and very rich also, he built a very opulent temple. And in this temple, uh, following the instructions of his Guru Loknath Goswami, Narottam Das had 6 deities installed in the temple. Deity of Mahaprabhu, Vallabhakanta, deity of Krishna. Deity of Krishna is Brajendra Mohan, and Radharaman deity and Radhakanta deity. And then the preparation of the festival was done to celebrate the appearance day of Mahaprabhu. So this was the first God Purnima festival that was done, and following that tradition, even now we celebrate God Purnima with lot of splendor and pomp. So in celebrating God Purnima, uh, Santosh Datta, he made very elaborate arrangements. He sent invitations to all the Vaishnavas, and not only invitations, he sent palanquins and carts and his servants. So Vaishnavas from all over the Gaudiya Desh came. Uh, uh, the Vaishnavas who were living in Navadvip, Jagannath Puri, uh, and the nearby places, they all came. The Srinivasa Acharya, he came. He was the one who actually did the abhishek of the installation of the deities. And this festival of Keturi, it is it is famous, and it started this tradition of having opulent festivals to worship the Lord. So it is said that in the festival, when the kirtan was going on, then Mahaprabhu himself appeared along with his associates, Narahari, Mukunda, Gauridas Pandit, Advaitacharya, Nityanand Prabhu. So they all appeared and they ecstatically participated in the kirtan. Jahanwa Mata was there. She cooked for the devotees over there, and she offered kumkum to the deities. And then that kumkum was taken and like holy, it was smeared on by the devotees on each other. And after the festival, Narottam Das was already famous, but his fame and glory, it spread even more widely. So Narottam, because of his exalted position as a Vaishnav, he also became so when people become famous, people also become envious. And of course, Narottam was not looking for fame. It came to him whether he wanted it or not. But because of that, he attracted a lot of disciples. And because of that also, people became envious of him. Specifically, they were envious because of his caste. So he had many disciples who were Brahmins. And the Smarta Brahmins are Brahmins who are caste Brahmins, born in Brahmin family. They became very angry. That how is it possible that a Shudra is initiating Brahmins? And this is against all everything that the Vedas say. So in the town there was a Smrata Brahman. His name is not known, but he kind of became the spokesperson of insulting Narottam Das, and he would speak strongly condemning him. And because of his offense to Vaishnavas, and specifically to an exalted Vaishnav like Narottam Das, he contracted leprosy, because of which his limbs started melting away. So he started, his worshipable deity was Durga Devi. So he started worshipping in that area of Gordadesh. Most of the people were followers of Durga Devi. So he started worshipping her and asking for her help. And she appeared in a dream to him and strongly chastised him, saying that that you have offended somebody who's close and dear to my Lord. My Lord is Krishna, and Narottam is a dear servant of him, and you have been offending him. I cannot do anything. You have to go and beg his forgiveness. So then this Brahmin, he went to Narottam Das and he fell at his feet. He begged for his forgiveness. And of course, the nature of Vaishnava is that they forgive very, very quickly. So Narottam Das, he forgave him. And because of that forgiveness, the Brahman was very, very quickly healed. He became healthy again. Another time, Narottam Das, he went to Gopalpur to visit a Brahman by the name of Vipradas. And he noticed that there was a storehouse that was locked. And he asked him that, what's going on? Why do you keep this locked? So he said, there is a very poisonous snake that lives in over here. So nobody dare go inside over there. So Narottam Das, he asked him to open the door. And then he went inside. And of course, the snake disappeared. And Narottam came out holding two deities of Mahaprabhu and Vishnu Priya. And those deities are worshipped even to this date in a place called Gamila there. Once in Keturi Gram, Narottam Das was sitting and he saw two young men. They were herding a goat and a buffalo. So he called them and he said that, where are you taking this goat and a buffalo? So the two young men said that we are Brahmins and our name is Harinam and Ramakrishna. And our father, he's a zamindar, the landholder in the village nearby. His name is Shivananda. It actually is an Acharya, it's Shivananda Acharya. So he has given us this instruction to take this goat and buffalo and offer in sacrifice to Durga Devi. So Narottam Das, he preached to them, and he said that all this tradition of offering and sacrifice, animal sacrifice, etc. This is all karmakand. And he basically preached Krishna consciousness to them. So they were very much taken in by the words of Narottam Das. So let the animals go. Not only did they leave the animals go, but they also took shelter of him. They received instructions from him and they actually became initiated by him. So they returned home and their father was shocked because they came home wearing Vaishnav tilaks, chanting Krishna's name. He said, what happened? What's going on? Did you give the animals for sacrifice? So then they started preaching to their father that this is not the right thing to do, etc. The father got very, very angry at them. And he started debating with his sons. But the sons were that whatever knowledge that they received from Narottam Das in this short time, that was sufficient for them. to completely defeat the father. So the father was a very egoistical person, and of course he wanted his sons to follow in his footsteps. So being very rich also, he said that, okay, if you want to talk from scriptures, then I may not be the person, but I know of some person who can come and talk not only to you, but to the so-called guru of yours, Narottama Das. So he summoned a Smarta Brahman by the name of Murari from Mithila. Mithila is in current-day Bihar. And Murari was famous for his scholarship. So Harinam and Ramakrishna, they went and told Narottama Das about this. And Narottama Das said that I have no problems having a discussion with him, but I think it is better that you have a discussion with him. So they said that we are just new to this, and this person is famous for his scholarship. And Narottama Das said, don't worry about it. The beauty of Krishna consciousness is its simplicity and the fact that it makes sense. So you don't have to use a lot of word jugglery. You don't have to use a lot of obscure references. So when this Brahman Murari came, the father, in order to humiliate his sons and Narottama Das, he actually arranged for a public debate. And unfortunately for him, in the public debate, Murari was completely defeated, not by Narottama Das, but by his two sons, who were students of Narottama Das. And the father, his name was Shivananda, he became completely perplexed. How is it possible? And when he was sleeping at night, then Durga Devi, for whom he was wanted to send the sacrifice, came in a dream and strongly chastised him that do not interfere with the activities of your students, and don't interfere with Vaishnavas. They are worthy of your worship. Later on, two very, very famous scholars and Brahmin scholars, Ganga Narayan and Jagannath, they heard about the glories of Narottama Das. And they came and they were so much taken in by him that they surrendered to him and they became his disciples. So when these Brahmins, who themselves were considered very elevated, very famous, became disciples of Narottama Das, then Smarta Brahmins everywhere began to get very, very upset. So they actually they formed like a petition. They formed a group, and they went to the king. The name of the king was Narsingha, and to complain to the king that this is what is happening, and he is a Shudra, but he is accepting disciples. The scriptures clearly say that he cannot accept disciples. Not only is he accepting disciples, but he is accepting Brahmin disciples. So he is completely contaminating the whole scriptures. And the king said that the best way to deal with this is to defeat Narottama based on philosophy. So at that time, there was another famous scholar by the name of Rupa Narayan. And Rupa Narayan had the upadhi of Mahadigvijay. So Digvijay is one who has conquered in all directions. Mahadigvijay is greater than that. So he had never been defeated. So he summoned him and he said that you should go to Kheturi and debate with Narottama Das and defeat him. And then after that, I can say that whatever he is speaking is not from the scriptures and arrest him and punish him. So this news came to be known to the disciples of Narottama Das. So one of his disciple, or actually Ramachandra Kaviraj, he was a disciple of Shyamananda Pandit, but he was very close to Narottama Das. So Ramachandra Kaviraj came to know about it, and he and Ganga Narayan, they said that unfortunately Narottama Das, he probably will not engage in a debate, because the mood of the Vaishnavas is that of service. They don't really want to engage so much into intellectual back and forth, and we have to somehow take care of it. So what Ganga Narayan and Ramachandra Kaviraj did was that in Khetirigram, they disguised themselves as shopkeepers, and they asked somebody there to give them, allow them to masquerade as the owners of that shop. So they were sitting in that shop, and in the meantime, the Digvijay Rupanarayan, he came with his own group of people and stopped at that shop. So when they stopped at the shop, then the two shopkeepers, who were actually Ramachandra and Ganga Narayan, they started conversing with them in Sanskrit. So they were quite surprised. They said, "You're just shopkeepers, you're speaking in Sanskrit?" They said, yes. Narottama Das lives over here, and by his mercy, we have a little bit of his knowledge, we have a little bit understanding of scriptures. And so then they started discussing with him. And then Rupanarayan, he initially started speaking simply, and then we could see that these people were knowledgeable. So finally, the debate of the position of Vaishnava with respect to Smarta Brahmins actually happened informally between Rupanarayan and Ganga Narayan and Ramachandra Kaviraj. And Rupanarayan was completely defeated by these two. So he was astounded. So he went back home and said that if these two simple shopkeepers who just said that they have some association with Narottama Das, if they are so expert and they have just defeated us, what hope do we have of engaging with Narottama Das? So he actually quietly left the town without even approaching Narottama Das. So when that happened, the king actually became inquisitive and curious about the stature of Narottama Das, the personality of Narottama Das. So he and Rupanarayan, they went to meet Narottama Das. And in the meeting, they were completely taken in by his polite and gentle Vaishnava behavior. They were completely taken in by his saintliness, and they gave up all the negative feelings they had. So they fell at his feet, begging for his forgiveness. And Narottama, of course, he forgave them, and they stayed there to serve him, and they became his disciples also. So during his stay in Narottama Das, so there were many other pastimes, and I'm just covering the prominent ones. He wrote many devotional songs. As I mentioned, even though he was vastly knowledgeable, he preached through his songs, and his songs were compiled in a book called Prathana. And the Prathana is so potent that the spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, he was a complete renunciate. Babaji, he had no possessions. The only possession that he had was this book of Prathana, of songs by Narottama Das Thakur. And Srila Prabhupada, he often sang bhajans from Prathana. So as I mentioned, the books are the bhajans are very sweet and enchanting, but they're also present a lot of Vaishnava Siddhanta. Srila Prabhupada, he quotes from them in his lectures in the Bhagavatam. And Narottama Das also wrote Prem Bhakti Chandrika, another famous book about pure devotional service. So by the influence of Narottama Das Thakur, many atheists and agnostics and offenders and followers of Durga and Shiva and dry logicians, they became purified and took to Krishna consciousness. After some time, Ramachandra Kaviraj, who, as I mentioned, was the disciple of Shyamananda Pandit, but also a close associate of Narottama Das. Ramachandra Kaviraj, he actually has the position of being the disciple of Narottama Das, but Narottama Das was very attached to him. So he went to Vrindavan Dham, taking the permission of Narottama Das Thakur, and there he left his body, entered into the Nitya Leela of Radha Govinda. And then shortly after that, Srinivasacharya also, he ended his Prakrit Leela and entered into the eternal pastimes of Radha Krishna. So hearing all this news, Narottama Das was plunged into the ocean of separation. And it is in this deep mood of separation from Vaishnavas that he wrote this famous song, Ye Nilo Premadhana. So this is a bhajan that is traditionally sung to honor the passing away of Vaishnavas. After some time, Narottam, he went to the bank of the Ganges in the village known as Gambhilya. And there was a temple of Mahaprabhu there, so he worshipped Mahaprabhu. And then he entered into the water of the Ganges. And then he asked his disciples to perform kirtan. And as they were performing kirtan, the body of Narottama Das, it melted into the waters of Ganges, and he also entered into the eternal pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So his disappearance day happened on the Krishna Panchami day of Kartik month, and his samadhi is there in Vrindavan, in the Radha Gokulnanda temple of Loknath Goswami there. So, with that, I'll end here, and we have some time. So, if you have any discussions, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions or any comments or discussions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. This is so wonderful class, Prabhuji, especially after hearing our Nityanand Trayodasi, because we are hearing the kirtans and lectures, so it is more emphatic. We could relish better, so I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, can you please share what are the eternal in Krishna Leela, what roles Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasacharya, and Shyamananda uh, uh, Prabhu they took part? Can you help us?
So I don't remember the name. So it's in Gaur Ganoda Peshak. There's a book, and they talk about the eternal position. My understanding is that they had similar position of manjaris, but I do not know which manjari. Shamananda Pandit, I'm not 100% sure, but if I remember rightly, there is a manjari called Shama Rasika Manjari. Because there is another pastime related to Shamananda Pandit there. He meets Srimati Radharani. And from that, as far as I remember, there's a manjari called Shamarasika Manjari, and he is a manifestation of her. Don't know of the other associates there. Like I said, the book has a pretty exhaustive list.
Sure, Prabhuji. Also, Prabhuji, if time permits, can you also share like how the books are able to retrieve from the Thief King by Srinivasacharya? If, yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting pastime that Srinivasacharya. So he started living over there because he knew that somebody over there had stolen his books. And then, of course, living there, he figured out this whole town is thieves, and the king is the head of the thieves. So I'm speaking from memory now, but he made some proposition that to the king that I have a greater treasure that I can give you instead of the books. And the king called him, and then he said, "Okay, give me this great treasure." In the king's mind, it was that I'll take this treasure. Books were pretty useless for him, but he had kept it in a vault, thinking that maybe there is something there. And Srinivasacharya then preached to him and essentially gave him the gift of Krishna Bhakti. So when he understood that gift, and he said, then he could understand the position of the books. And he, of course, then he released the books. He gave them back to Shamananda Pandit. And as I mentioned, that he became a Vaishnava, and by the influence of Shamananda Pandit's preaching and his conversion, actually the whole town became a Vaishnava. The town, I forget the name, but I hear from devotees that even to this day, it is people, they step out of the house with Vaishnava tilaks, and they greet each other with Hare Krishna, and they're all, I don't know whether, I don't know the depth of what they practice, but they're all Vaishnavas. They're just like in some towns, you have some particular deity that they mention. It's still 550 years later on, they're still very strongly following that tradition.
Sure. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad Pranam.
Haribol Akshay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for covering Narottam Das Thakur's Leelas. I think we should call them Leelas, right? So I have one question, Prabhuji. I had it for some time. So as you had mentioned that in one of our discussions on Tuesday calls, when we are doing Chaitanya Leela, that Vishnu's name is mentioned in pretty much all the scriptures. Rare is Krishna's name. Even rarer is Radharani's name, and even rarer than that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name in the scriptures. So there's also this understanding that, even higher than the worship or service of Krishna is serving to a Vaishnava. So and we also know that when we listen to these pastimes of Krishna, it it is auspicious and it starts the purification process. So, would it be correct to also understand that hearing the pastimes of these devotees is also equally potent or even higher than that? Can you speak a little bit on that, Prabhuji, please?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. If you look at Bhagavatam, then other than the 10th canto, all of the Bhagavatam is pastimes of the associates or devotees of Krishna. Krishna appears briefly in the first canto. After that, he's pretty much gone. You don't see Krishna much. He comes in the 10th canto. I mean, he comes in his incarnations, Vara and Narasimhadev, but not as Krishna. And this notion that Srila Prabhupada, and based on the scriptures, makes over and over again, that Krishna includes his devotees. Name Krishna includes his devotees, includes his Leela and his pastimes, his the holy dham. So especially devotees of Krishna, because when you do Krishna Katha of regarding the devotees of Krishna, then it's like you're getting you're getting nectar that has been made even more sweet. You may read in the scriptures about Krishna and get something, but when devotees discuss about Krishna, then that nectar has been sweetened by their love and realizations. And when we talk about that, then we get access to that sweetness. Like when we look at the pastimes of Narottama Das, then we see a person born in a very opulent family and giving up everything. A Naistik brahmachari. He never married. Single-minded focus was service to Guru. Take the orders of Jiva Goswami, his Siksha Guru, and Loknath Goswami, his Diksha Guru, to preach. And in reciprocation for that, he got so much mercy. Now, of course, he was an eternal associate, so he had some help. But in the Prakrit Leela, we could see that just because he had taken the instructions of his Guru to his head, because he developed detachment, he was constantly receiving mercy. So these are these are aspects of bhakti that we can relate to. We can relate to serving other devotees. We can relate to being tempted by material things and trying to develop detachment. We can relate to the power of kirtan songs, because even though Jiva Goswami is the greatest of scholars, and Narottama Das, by all accounts, was a great scholar, but he became a powerful preacher because of his singing. He sang. He had a beautiful voice, and he composed his own songs. And like I said, that he set them to, not all of them, but some of them, he set them to very popular contemporary tunes, the kind of songs at that time that were played in melas and marketplaces. So he set them to those tunes. So people would just sing them just because they were enchanting songs. And they would sing them, they would take Krishna's name, they would take Mahaprabhu's name and enjoy. And at the same time, because of his own pureness and potency, he was also establishing Vaishnava Siddhant amongst his disciples, which continues. If you look at the lineage of our disciplic succession, then many of our acharyas, they come down from the disciplic succession of Narottama Das Thakur. So all this is very enchanting. That now, even though Narottama Das Thakur was 500 years ago and a different personality, but there are so many aspects that we can relate to. And when we glorify him, then it's more potent than glorifying Krishna. It's because one is with glorification is a natural desire to emulate also. That let me be like Narottama Das Thakur. Let me try and follow the orders of my guru. Let me preach with whatever way that I can preach. Let me develop detachment. And then we also meditate on who Narottama Das was meditating on, Mahaprabhu, Krishna. So yeah, short answer to your question is yes. That's highly recommended.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Bhayahari Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful nectar that we don't get to hear and read often, because we often delve into Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, where more personalities are glorified. But yeah, it was nice to hear. My only question is, this book that we read, right? Songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas, which have some songs from Narottama Das. There are also a lot of songs from Bhakti Vinod Thakur, right? So is there a relationship between the two?
There is a lineage relationship. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, of course, came almost 400 years after Narottama Das, but same lineage, same parampara, and also he his son Bhakti Siddhant was actually almost can be considered to be kind of like a mirror personality of Narottama Das, a great scholar, and he also had this ability to preach with whatever he could, what was contemporary. He did not follow the Kirtan path that much. Bhakti Vinod did. Bhakti Vinod was actually both. He wrote some of the most scholarly books, Jaiva Dharma, and wrote wonderful kirtans also. But Bhakti Siddhant, he emulated Narottama Das Thakur a lot. He was the only disciple, like Narottama Das was the only disciple of Lokanath Maharaj. Bhakti Siddhant was the only disciple of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. And the same mood of fearlessly preaching with whatever is there, he emulated that mood. From a spiritual perspective, I'm not aware if they are eternal associates. That part I'm not aware of. They probably are, but don't know the specifics.
Yeah, I was asking because, yeah, in one book, only both these personalities' songs are there. So not even from a spiritual perspective, I was thinking there must be some lineage relationship or some spiritual relationship. As you said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur emulated a lot. And Srila Prabhupada, when he instructed for this book, he said to pick the songs from these two personalities. So there has to be some correlation.
Yeah, you're right. Prabhupada was very fond of bhajans by Narottama Das Thakur.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu Narottama. A very releasing pastimes of and lifetime of Narottama Das Thakur. I just remember that every day morning we sing this Sri Guru Charana Padma. So that actually written by, I think, Narottama Das Thakur. So every day morning we remember him, but didn't know much about him. So it was really, really very helpful to understand his pastimes and his association with Mahaprabhu and his Leela. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so if there are no further discussion, then we can chant one round. After that, we'll do Narsingadev prayer. Who's doing the Narsingadev prayer?
Ishani, Majesta Kajal's daughter, older daughter.
I see them here. Okay. So if you can get your beads and unmute yourself, so we'll chant one round together. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura
Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna
Hare Hare, Ram Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,